Welcome everyone to our session. I just opened the Q&A, so if anyone is there and has questions, you are welcome to join us and ask questions. I'm going to start by saying this session is writing about midlife. It's our author panel. We have Megan and Karen, who are two authors who write about midlife. And we were talking about, do you want to get started writing about midlife or create publishable personal essays? So I'm Robin Finn, and I'm the creator and founder of Heart Soul Pen, and I'm the editor of the Heart Soul Pen online magazine hosted by Medium. And I would love to encourage people to write more about midlife and to submit their work. And I want to give Megan and Karen a chance to introduce themselves and talk about, I don't know, how you got started, what kind of moments that you write about. So why don't you start, Megan?
Hi, I'm Megan Dolan, and I'm located in Long Beach.
I still can't hear you. It worked the other day.
Analyst is having tech diff, so
yes. I started writing in my 30s, but it really amped up after I had kids in my late 30s, early 40s, because I found that I couldn't go up and be a part of my theater company that I had been in LA because I had two little babies. And so I just started writing about my life as a mom and performing at because I do, I'm an actor as well. Oh, my screen just went blank. Performing at Expressing Motherhood, which is a storytelling show. And I started just creating these pieces. And then my son, when he was 5, was diagnosed with autism. And I started writing about that in real time, about the diagnosis, about the support groups, and about how I felt like I was the wrong mom to handle this because I'm not type A, I'm not organized. And so I started writing about that and created a show called Lemur Mom, which I perform around Southern California. So writing in midlife has been pretty much saved me and helps. What I feel like it does is helps me to navigate these situations that feel crushing and kind of can give me a new perspective, and almost it's very empowering because you can kind of change the narrative and take back some of the just the feelings of overwhelm just by sharing the experience, and then to find that it resonates with others. And that's what I love about Heart Soul Pen too, is we all write on Zoom and we write for 20 minutes, which sometimes it feels like I didn't know I could write for that long, at one time, because I have to really break it up. And then to share what we write is just everything that I hear is just, it's so relatable, and every voice is so different. And I find that really inspiring too.
That's awesome. Thank you, Megan. And Karen, will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Karen McCara. I started writing with Robin and with Heart Soul Pen in 2017, and I have been a lifelong performer, actor, singer, but I never really thought of myself as a creative person. I thought, I can execute these lines or I can read somebody else's work, but I don't have that creative spark. That's kind of how I thought of myself. I thought of creativity as something, you have to be inventing things from whole cloth, new worlds. And, that's really how I related to it. And when I started writing with Heart Soul Pen, it really helped to reinforce for me that no, the stuff of our own lives is really interesting and other people really connect with it. And that was kind of a revelation for me. And especially in midlife, I was in midlife at that time. And I think there's just a lot of juicy stuff going on and a lot of interesting stuff. And it is, of course, there's a therapeutic aspect to it too. It's sharing, it's feeling like you're not alone in the world. But I also found that, this really resonated for a lot of people. And so I did a one-woman show after that I wrote. And it was really the character was a middle-aged woman, just dealing with kind of the stuff of life. And it was a wonderful experience. And I haven't stopped writing since then. I just find it to be a wonderful process for me. And the practice is really then putting it out into the world. That's the scarier part of it. The writing is great and great for me. And then, Medium and other avenues provide this ability to share your work. And that piece has really been eye-opening also.
Awesome. Thank you. And Becky, can you hear us? Okay. No. All right.
So I have closed caption on because I can't hear anybody. So I'm reading the comments. I have no idea what's happened. But for me, so I never considered myself a writer. About 3 years ago, at the beginning of the pandemic, I'm an OBGYN physician, and Robin, actually, who I've known for quite some time, encouraged me to take her Heart Soul Pen class. I was on sabbatical, and I didn't know if I was a creative writer or a nonfiction writer. So I took the class, and really in that process, discovered I am a writer. I have been living with MS since I was 30. So I've had this disease for 25 years. And through the process of the class, I really began to process my journey with MS. And it has been incredibly empowering and helpful to me. And I discovered, even though I don't like reading nonfiction, that I actually really love writing nonfiction. And it has been incredibly empowering for me to process my journey with MS.
Awesome. Thank you, Becky. So one of the things I talked about this session addressing was how to create publishable personal essays. So you've all published personal essays. And I think for a lot of people, that idea of like, well, how do I turn my writing into something publishable, or what to write about? And I know in this session, I talked about how both small moments in midlife and also major transitions can sometimes turn into personal essays. So is there any, is there a small moment or a large transition that inspired your writing? I'll just say for me that one of my most popular essays, which was in the New York Times, was called When Our Daughter Walked In on Us. And that was inspired by something that happened on a Sunday morning. I was just writing about it because it was funny, and, crafted it into a personal essay, and then just decided to send it out. It was published. And I feel like a lot of my personal essays that I've written, that I've posted on Medium, have been about, a lot of them have been about loss and about losing my mother in midlife. Mm-hmm. I've written a lot about that. Sometimes a large thing, like what it was like to try to deal with hospice, and sometimes a small thing, like, seeing something that was my mother's favorite color, and that turned into a personal essay about grief and loss. So I'm going to go back to you, Megan. Like, is there a small moment, or would you say it's mostly large things that have turned into personal essays for you?
I remember, and I don't remember what prompt it was, but it was in one of Robin's classes, and I remember writing. There was this very large praying mantis that was living in our bush in the backyard. And I developed a relationship. Every day I would go out and see this praying mantis, and we named it Stick because it was brown. And I remember writing a whole essay about it, which turned into just like, it was about motherhood because the praying mantis, it was obvious it was a female, and things that I wouldn't think would end up in the essays that are just in my subconscious. That's why I love this way of writing, because Robin really says, don't edit. Yeah, that's right. You do not edit when you're doing the first draft, or as Anne Lamott says, the shitty first draft. And it's so freeing because you find these things that are in your subconscious that you're wrestling with that you don't even know. And so I wrote this whole essay about this praying mantis, and it was incredibly just inspiring and satisfying to use these little moments that you don't think anything of it at the time, but then it comes out, and it is obviously something you've been kind of mulling over and dealing with, and it gets to come out in these essays.
And that is such a great point, Megan, because having this praying mantis in the essay and what it means for the character, the main character who's going out every day and looking at it, and it becomes a metaphor for so many things. And this is such a great example of how a small moment can be so meaningful in the writing. So that's a great example. And what about you, Karen?
Yeah, I think sometimes I come to the computer and I have a really fixed idea about what I want to write about, something, either some kind of trigger that happened recently or some big major life event. I mean, again, in midlife, there's all kinds of stuff going on, death of a parent and a child's illness and divorce and, big major life events that obviously there's a lot to write about. But sometimes it is these not just small things, sort of the noise that's in my head, like body issues. I mean, I have found myself coming to that over and over, or just sort of some of the indignities about, being a woman in midlife. These are the kinds of things that are floating around in my mind, just nudging me and bothering me. And then there's this outlet of sit down and it's have a rant, and especially when you're not sort of editing as you go along, everything winds up on the page, and then, you can edit it down later. So that's a very freeing way to sit down and write and sort of just free associate and just get it all out. And I do find that even though it sometimes starts out as this kind of rant that has no direction, usually it does wind up with some sort of beginning, middle, and end. So I love writing in that way, where it's just, maybe a prompt. Robin was always bringing in wonderful prompts. Sometimes I'll give myself a prompt, I'll just open a book and find a passage that resonates with me and use that as a prompt.
And Karen, I remember in one of your pieces, it either opened with the person in front of you in yoga class.
Yes.
Again, it was just like this amazing detail that brought the whole piece alive. And we, the reader, were there with her as she described what it was like to sit in yoga class and like look at some of the other people around. I still remember that piece.
Yeah. I mean, I think sometimes these little mundane things will happen and I'll just grab my phone and make a note. And I have a whole, notes app filled with just notes of things that I thought that'd be cool to sit down and write about. And so many of them I haven't come around to yet, but it's just sitting there kind of like a repository of stuff, little details of life that I think this could be an interesting personal essay or an interesting piece. So
that's another great piece of wisdom is keeping a list of like these little moments that pop into your mind, and you kind of have a sense that there's more to say about this story. These little moments, but maybe you can't say it right now. So I love how you capture that, Karen. You could do it on your notepad, or if you actually have a notebook. And then when you're feeling like I have nothing to write about, you've got these moments all lined up.
Yes.
And Becky, what about you?
I would say for me, learning how to write freely and doing the prompts was a big challenge, which I got much better at. And what I really found with writing the prompts, it did come back a lot to MS. I write a lot about that. And really understanding my feelings about it. And I really came into this class in a point with my disease. I had denied it for a long time. And at the point I started the class, I was really starting to have issues with my health and feeling very closed about it, not sharing it. And in the process of any prompt that we had in class, I could somehow tie it into that. And then writing about it and sharing about it really helped me. As a physician, I take care of people. And then figuring out how, I'm someone who needs care myself. And so really learning that I can be a caretaker and at the same time need care. And through the prompts, I know I'm focusing on this, but for me, this big transition in my life has been greatly helped by writing. And it's also inspired me to write a memoir about my journey, which I never thought I would do. But I feel really excited to do that.
And so one of the things, thank you, Becky. And one of the things I wanted to address that you brought up is, so what some of the writers are referring to is in the class, I bring in prompts, or I have people bring in prompts, just everyday prompts that have to show up in the writing. And because you have something from your closet or something from nature that has to show up, it makes the writing go in different ways. But one of the things that Becky brought up is, I believe that when you really allow yourself to write without censoring, you're going to come back to the themes that are important to you, no matter what the prompts are. And to Becky's point, and this happens a lot with writers, where they'll share with me, I'm always writing about MS. I'm always writing about my divorce. I'm always writing about my kids. And it's like they don't want to write about the thing to be written. And so I'm always encouraging people to get out of that judgmental mind and allow what wants to be written about, because that is your juiciest topics. That's why it wants to be written. And to have patience with yourself. So many writers have like one or two themes over a long career. Mm-hmm. So if you find over a few years you have one or two themes, it's okay. And I think people sometimes feel very judgmental about that I'm writing about the same thing. I mean, clearly midlife is a very full subject. You can write about your body, aging, your kids getting older, your career. I mean, there's lots and lots of things. But if you find that you keep coming back to the same topic, what I want to say is I think that's because that topic wants to be written about. And this idea of like not judging yourself for wanting to write about what wants to be written, I believe is where your juiciest material comes, because that's the stuff that really is energy for you. So I can see we have about 10 people who are joining us. So I opened up the Q&A and I really wanted there to be time for questions. So if anyone wants to ask a question, you are welcome to. I'm hitting this button that says your attendees will now be notified that Q&A is open. So if you would like to ask a question, you're welcome to. Otherwise, we're just going to continue our conversation. But one of the things that I said that this session would cover was how writing on Medium, and I would say in general, how you feel you've been impacted by sharing your work. So is there like one main thing that's happened or changed for you, not just by keeping your writing in your own computer, but by posting it on Medium and sharing it? So Megan, what about you?
Mm-hmm. I think the main thing that's happened for me is just almost normalizing my experience, finding that kind of the things that I would most not want to share when I share in my writing, that people just nod their heads and really relate to it, which helps me to not feel like I'm, alone. Yes, connection would be the main thing that I've found, and a feeling of confidence, because it seems like people do appreciate my voice and my writing, and that encourages me to keep going. So sharing it really, I feel, propels me and gives me momentum.
Okay, so that's really awesome. So the idea of being able to connect with other people, and sometimes obviously there's comments. I've had people email me personally, and I'm sure you have. So the idea of really being able to connect with other people, feeling less alone. And I love what you said about building your momentum as a writer, feeling like I'm going to stick with this because I feel inspired.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes one comment, the person won't even know that it's done this, but that one comment I'll hold on to for weeks, and it'll keep me going. Yeah.
That's awesome. And what about you, Karen? Is there like one way that you feel publishing your work has affected you?
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was really a massive deal the first time kind of putting my own writing out there. And it happened to be in my one-woman show the first time. Before I really started publishing on Medium. But, the world didn't end. I mean, that's really what it boiled down to. For me, it was like, oh my God, if I say these things out loud, the world will end.
Yes.
Like it was that terrifying. The stakes were that high for me in the beginning. And I really thought, if I say this out loud, people are going to think I'm insane, or people are going to think I'm depraved, that I can't believe like these crazy thoughts that are in my mind, I'm now putting out into the world. And the actual experience was, of course, so vastly different from that. Things really resonated for people. I felt seen, I felt understood, and also I felt like they really got something out of it. And the reactions are sometimes, gosh, you said the thing that I think all the time that I can't say out loud. So I realized that there is not to be so like, oh yay me, but that you give a gift to people when you share your sort of innermost self through your writing. And that frees other people to also talk about and feel comfortable with things that maybe they keep inside. And so when I started to look at it through that lens of, if I keep it in my computer, that's kind of a selfish thing,
Right?
That doesn't then give this, if I'm writing it down, maybe it's going to help somebody else, maybe it's going to resonate for somebody else. And that was very galvanizing and freeing. So I try to think of it in those terms.
And I go ahead.
I just want to jump on that really quick, what Karen said about the world won't end. And I've also learned when an essay or something that I write doesn't get the response I want, also the world won't end. Like I've learned that I can be disappointed because I wanted a different, outcome, and I can keep writing, so that's been really helpful too, because the stakes do feel so high of like, this has to, go viral or what, and then it doesn't. And you're like, okay, I guess I'll keep writing.
Well, I think both of your points are so well made. I want to get back to what Karen said about, I really believe that your writing is a gift to others. And when too often writers, particularly writers who are writing about midlife, will tell me like, who's going to care about this? Nobody cares, which is not true. And I think as the world becomes more curated with Facebook and all these other things, and everything looks so beautiful, that the truth is even more important to people. We need authentic voices so that we can see our own real experiences that are reflected back to us. It's so empowering to know I'm not alone. I'm not the only person that has this real experience. Not everything in my life looks so perfect, but really all these things are falling apart, including my body, my kids, my life. And, there's all this material that I want to write about. And that's what really resonates for people. And I really do think it is a gift to share your work, to allow other people to hear your voice. It allows other people to feel less alone. I cannot encourage writers more to say that I think it is so important to be willing to share your work, whether it's on Medium. Medium's so easy to decide to post something. So it's a great place to start for sure. But I think it is a real gift to share your work and to have the willingness and the courage to try. And Becky, what about you? Did you find a shift when you began to publish your work?
I completely agree what Megan and Karen are saying. And I haven't posted a lot on Medium, but a few things. It's just exactly what you're saying, to put yourself out there and realize that you do touch people with your writing. And, I've even found that by reading in class, I'm just sharing your work, and it really does have an impact on other people. And so many people feel the same way. And I think it definitely can make people feel not so alone. And it also makes you, the writer, not feel so alone, especially when you get such good feedback. And no one's going to, well, I guess that's not entirely true, because I did hear someone not getting positive reviews. But for the most part, what people write and post about your writing is incredibly positive. And so for the writer themselves, it's empowering. It's empowering for the readers as well as for the writers.
So I do have a bunch of questions, so I want to get through this. And thank you all for telling me that you were here. I'm clearly, we had some technical difficulties starting this talk, but now I get to see all the things you've written. I'm so glad that you're here. One person asked me, like, what is midlife? And I mean, I'd say, like, that's up to you, 40 to 60. I mean, I think today midlife is a much wider range. So I wouldn't say there's any specific boundaries for what is midlife, but I guess the point of writing about midlife is you're writing about, you've got some mileage in your life, you're writing about things that have come up at a point in your life where I think there's a lot of juice in terms of transitions.
Mm-hmm.
I think midlife can be for a lot of people a time of transitions, whether it's from parenting, whether it's from work, whether it's your physical self. So I think when I'm talking about writing about midlife, all these writers are writing about things that have to do with transitions in their own lives, and that's one of the things that that I would say is midlife. One of the questions was, hold on. Oh, how do you deal with what might be adverse family reactions? I just want to address that by saying that I talk to writers a lot about the fact that there are two different processes, writing and sharing. In order to be able to write freely, you have to consider that you're not sharing this work. It's just for you, so that you can make a space for yourself to write freely. Then there's the process of discernment where you decide, am I going to share this? I think it's really personal for each person if there are people in their story, whether or not they want to publish their work. Sometimes it really is a pause for you to edit or decide to make some shifts because of people. It's really very personal. Other people feel like I'm a writer and I'm going to write and that's what I'm going to do. So, but I do think it's really important to separate these ideas of writing and sharing, because if you're writing thinking you're going to share, you're going to inhibit your writing. You're not going to be able to write freely because you're going to be so worried about what everyone's going to think. So as a writing teacher, a writing coach, and a writer myself, I would say separate them. Write freely, whatever you want. And then you'll have that process of discernment where you'll think about, is this something I want to publish, and can I publish it in this way, or do I need to make changes? Some people have asked about, do you publish under your own name or a pseudonym? So Megan, your own name or pseudonym?
Oh, I've always published under my own name. But I do have so when I originally wrote my show, Lemur Mom, I used all of our real names, mine, my husband's, and my kids. And as my kids got older, my son requested that I change the names, which I have done. So, so it is possible to kind of, adjust and moderate and go back. And I remember Anne Lamott said, like, just change a couple characteristics about that character and they'll never know it was them.
Karen, your own name or a pen name?
Yeah, I was going to say I've only ever used my own name, but I would consider using a pen name. I'm working on a novel now, and I would consider it. I think because I don't want to be inhibited by this question of what about not just my family, but the people I know, and not even that they would necessarily see themselves reflected, although they might. But also, as sort of a way to just make me feel a little bit better. Because I try to really get at the truth, and sometimes it feels shameful, and if that's a way of making it feel a little bit less scary, then why not? I think a pseudonym is an interesting option, so I might explore that at some point. But yeah, I think that this whole question of other people getting offended or upset, I mean, there are so many ways around that. If you do want to share work that you've written that you feel like, oh gosh, somebody could be upset, there is fiction writing, and you can talk about a lot of the same things, and and it gives you some freedom to change some details and
yes.
and embellish. So why not? So I'm finding that very fun to write fiction, that of course still has a lot of relationship to my own life. So.
Oh, and Becky, what about you? Your own name or pen name?
I was going to say, for me, I think it's really important to write under my own name, especially when I'm writing about MS and wanting to be very vulnerable and open. Again, because I spent so much time hiding my disease, just being out there. And I think the complicated thing for me as I think about writing the memoir and some of my journey, I've had this disease as long as I've been a physician, is figuring out how to write about my experiences as a physician and maybe patient interactions, which obviously you would never use someone's name. But I always wonder what would happen, if I write about a certain experience I had with the patient and they read the memoir and realize it's them. So that I do want to use my own name, but then there's that small issue. But again, I think if you don't use someone's name, you're okay.
Okay. I mean, these are a lot of different aspects to consider. Um, I write under my own name, and I also have written fiction, and it's sort of, you can fictionalize or base your fiction on your real life, but it doesn't. It's not fiction. It is fiction. It's not nonfiction. So you can do that too. But if you want to write nonfiction, you can use a pen name or you can use your own name. The writers here all said that they're writing under their own names. Someone asked, is Heart Soul Pen a publication on Medium, and are you taking submissions? Yes, Heart Soul Pen is a publication on Medium, and yes, I am taking submissions. So feel free to find it, hit the submit button. I'd love to share your work. And I guess for a last question, somebody asked about editing, and do you share your work with friends or other colleagues, and or does that inhibit your process? And I want to just say, I really encourage people, as in early drafts and as a story is emerging, not to share their work or only share it with people who know how to give strength-based feedback, which is no critique, to just share what they noticed and what they're wondering about your piece. I find that writers too often share their work way too soon, and they get these comments from people that are actually not helpful and shut people down.
Yeah.
And as a writing teacher, I will say, I think critical feedback is given way too early in the process. And I encourage you as a writer to hold on to your stories until you really feel like, I've written as much as I can, I've edited as much as I can, and now I don't know where to go. But until you're at that point, I really recommend you just ask for strength-based feedback, which is what is working in a piece and what someone is wondering about. I wonder about this detail or that detail. If you get too much critical feedback early in the process, it can shut people down. And I guess I'll have the last question a couple of people asked is, can you talk about how often do you write? So I'm going to ask each of you briefly, give me just a one-liner about like, how often do you typically write? So I'll start with you because I want to have a chance for everyone to answer. Megan.
How often? It's this summer it's been sporadic, but ideally I use a timer. That's really the key for me. And I write and I'll set goals for myself at the beginning of the week that like Robin taught me. And ideally like 4 days a week for 20 minutes is like
4 days a week, minimum 20 minutes.
20 minutes. But I have like this summer has not happened, but
that's your ideal writing process.
Mm-hmm,
excellent. Yeah. Karen, what about you?
I mean, not often enough. It's a practice, and I'm always trying to write more. It's a discipline, so I find that I get in the groove if I sit down at my computer really every day or, 5 days a week. And again, that can be 10, 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. That's when I really get going. And a lot of times I'll edit or whatever and not write. But if I sit at my computer and say I'm committing to 30 minutes a day, that's when I can really sort of get going. And usually it winds up being more if I'm in that kind of a groove. But it helps to have a community of people who hold you accountable. I will say, and that is such a big part of Heart Soul Pen. Just making a commitment to a group and saying, this is what I'm going to do. It really motivates me to do it as opposed to just sort of having a goal in my own head. So I encourage that.
And what about you, Becky?
Yeah, I agree with what Karen's saying. And, since I'm pretty busy as a physician, I try and make a commitment, and I make a commitment once a week to write for 10 minutes. Just because that's not an intimidating thing to do. And then I find I write much longer than that. So I think that's a really important point, is to set yourself up for success by making a commitment that you can meet. And then if you go over, that's fantastic if you only do 10 minutes, but then you've done it. The other thing I will say is to be a writer, you need to write. And I find, when I'm busy with work and I'm not writing enough, I feel like my juices don't flow quite as much. So, and when I write more, I'm much better. So I think that's also an important point, to at least try and write something, to make a commitment to write at least once a week.
So I want to thank all of you. I will just say I also feel like it's really important to make a commitment to your writing. And I always say move it up on your priority list. If writing isn't the top three, it won't get done. I mean, when my kids were little, I would say like keep the kids alive, keep me alive, write. So I mean, it's like whether it's like work and make dinner and write. But if writing is not one of your top three priorities, it will not get done. People in midlife tend to be very busy. You're juggling a lot of things. Some people have aging parents, they still are dealing with kids, they've got their work, they might have a partner, et cetera, et cetera. If writing is not one of your top three things, it will not get done. So I encourage you to make it one of your top three things, to set a goal each week. I mean, you can see it's wide how often people write. But even if you write 5 minutes a week, after 52 weeks, you'll be amazed at the amount of material you have. So I really encourage you to make a commitment. I also just want to say, as I'm looking through the questions, I just want to thank everyone for being with us. And I see a lot of people have written that they're frustrated with this platform and they don't see their questions. So I'm sorry. And it's a new platform for me too. So we didn't actually know what the hell was going on at the beginning, but I want to thank, so I have no idea if 99 people came or 10, because there's all these different numbers, but I want to thank everyone who joined us and for this discussion. Heart Soul Pen is a Medium publication. I would love to share your work. It focuses on midlife. Please submit. And I want to thank Becky, Megan, and Karen for being here for the discussion. You can find all of them on Medium. You can follow them. You can follow them in the magazine. You can follow them individually to read more of their work. So I encourage you to do that. I encourage you to submit. And thank you all so much for being with us at the session.
Okay.